My name is Kayla Willis. I'm interviewing Dennis Earl Schnoeker, Sr. on April the 27th, 2018 at the Sparta Public Library in Sparta, Illinois. Where and when were you born?
I was born in Murfreesboro, Illinois in 1947, November 15th.
Who were your parents and what were their occupations?
Okay, my father, he was he had a business at one time, a dry cleaning business over in Stillville, Illinois called Tri Cleaners. And he also depended on the politics back at that time, whether it was Democrats or Republicans, he worked down at Mental Health in Chester, Illinois. My mother, her maiden name was Ballman, and she actually sort of helped run the dry cleaning business. Other than that, she was a housekeeper.
Who are your siblings?
Okay, I have 3 siblings. I'm the oldest one of the family, the siblings, My sister Sharon, her last name now is Deering, and she lives in Las Cruces, New Mexico with her husband Joe. And then I have a brother whose name is Dean, and he lives here in Sparta also, and he's 10 years younger than I am, Then I have the youngest sister that's named Sandra Schnoeker, Sandra Schnoeker Hostetler. At the moment, her husband passed away about 2 years ago, and she's engaged now to be married this coming October.
Wow. Have any served in the military?
I'm sorry?
Have any served in the military?
No. Oh wait, no, my brother served in the Air Force, he was up in Alaska, mainly, so.
What were you doing before you joined the service?
Okay, after I got out of high school, I worked for, IDOT for about a year because one of the people that worked there had broken their leg, and they gave me the job to work there while he recovered. After that, I went to work for a little while at Gilster, over in Stillville, and then I got drafted.
In what year did you join the service?
Okay, I got into the service in 1967.
And how long did you serve?
2 years.
Where were you living when you joined the service?
Okay, I was living in Stillville, Illinois. It was it would have been West Broadway. And right now, where I lived was right across the street from where the high school used to be, which is now the Civic Center, the City Hall, And the house that we lived in now is Casey's over there in Stillville.
In which branch of the military did you serve?
I served in the Army.
Why did you choose that specific branch of the military?
I didn't really choose it. That's what I went into when I got drafted.
What happened when you departed from training camp and during your early days of training?
As far as basic training, you mean? After that? Or? Okay. Well, after basic training, I went to AIT, Advanced Individual Training, and I had my basic training and my AIT both at Fort Leonard Wood, in Missouri.
Do you recall your instructors?
No, I really don't.
What did you think of basic training?
Mostly what they made us do at the time, was practice, marching. We had military code and stuff that we had to learn, and as far as rifle practice and stuff like that, and a lot of running.
What was the worst part of boot camp?
I'm not really sure. There was several times, especially when we was doing a lot of running, there was one person in in my company. He was extremely large. He had a hard time running, and most of the time it would take 2 of us to get on each side of him to hold him up so he would not fall down while we ran.
Did you receive any specialized training?
I had that AIT, and that was at Fort Leonard Wood, like I said, and that was in mechanics. You know, I worked on diesel engines and stuff like that, learned how to drive some of the equipment and whatnot all. And when I graduated from that, I was supposed to be heavy equipment assistant mechanic.
How did you adapt to the military life?
I don't really know. I just did it. You know, I learned how to. You know, well, my father, he was in World War II, and he was in the Marines, and I guess I learned a lot about what military life would be like from him. Okay, and I guess that's how I, you know, learned how to adapt.
Where did you serve?
Where did I serve? Okay, after I got a basic training in AIT, well, at that time, Vietnam War was going on, and all of the, in my AIT company, I forget how many was in it, you know, it was like 100 people or more, you know, and out of all of them, one of them did not go to Vietnam. He went to Germany. The rest of us all went to Vietnam. So.
What kind of friendships did you form while serving?
Okay, there was several people that I got involved with. You know, I worked around, and we became friends. You know, and hung out together, did different things together and stuff. You know, and we had, you know, joked and drank. You know, and stuff like that. You know, I had. There was two real good buddies I had while I was in Vietnam. One of them was the company commander's driver, you know, and then there was the other one. He was the clerk, you know, and he also worked as gave out the mail for all the people in our company, you know.
How did you stay in touch with family and friends back home?
At that time, it was, you know, it's not like today, you know, where the people in the service can use laptops, and they can even call home and stuff, you know, from their places where they're working, you know, or at, like overseas and stuff. Back then, the only way we got in touch with our family was by mail. You know, we'd write letters and stuff like that, or some of the guys would have tape recorders, and they would make, you know, make tapes on that, and they'd get tapes back from their family, you know, and that's how they talk. The one time when I went on R&R, I went over to Australia, and I told my family, I wrote them, I said, when I was going to be there, I told them, you know, in my letters, what time I would call them. And when I got over there to Australia, I made one phone call, you know, back to Illinois from there, you know. And that's the only time I got to talk to my family while I was in Vietnam.
What did you do for recreation or when you're off duty?
Most of the time, you know, we would just, you know, relax, play cards. Some guys would play volleyball, you know, and this and that and the other, or just lay around and listen to music, you know. That was about it. The other thing I did after the job I had to do while I was in my company over in Vietnam was I had to have paperwork up to battalion headquarters by 8 o'clock in the morning, where all the equipment was going in our battalion. And the first sergeant put me on 24-hour guard duty, and I was down in the bunker, you know, and the next thing I knew, he come pulling up in his Jeep, and he walked up and he says, "Schnoeker, why didn't you tell me you had to have reports up to headquarters by 8 o'clock? I said, "Sir, Sergeant, you didn't ask me." So he says, "Get in the Jeep." So I went over there and had to make out the reports, and after that he took me off all duties after that. I didn't have to do any kind of extra duty. So I had a friend that was worked in supply, and he was also in charge of the EM club, and he asked me if I wanted to work down there. So I started working down there, and at nights I would get, guys would come in there and, have drinks and stuff, and I was passing out that. Well, then I got another job having to do the paperwork for that outfit, so.
What was your most memorable experience while serving?
My most memorable one is, and it's kind of rough because when I was over in Nam, a buddy of mine, I went to school with, he went into service about a month or two before I did. And he went through basic training, and then they gave him AIT, and he was supposed to be a sergeant, so he had to go to school for that. Well, I got my basic training in AIT, and I went over to Vietnam before he got there. Well, I found out where he was at, so we started corresponding by letters, and he wasn't really that far from where I was at. And we made arrangements that we was going to see each other one day, because he was coming into where I was stationed at, and I told him, where I was at, and he said, okay, I'll see you, Well, it come out the day that he was supposed to be there, that the outfit I worked for, we was making bridge stuff, and we was building a bridge, and I had to escort the people that was taking these concrete beams to where they was building a bridge, and I missed seeing him. And it was maybe like 2 weeks after that he got killed over there. So, and I didn't find out about that till my parents called, wrote to me, and that was like a week and a half, 2 weeks after he was killed, So that was one of the worst things that I had to deal with,
And what did you think of the people you served with?
Most of the people, were very, good to work with, and stuff like that. There was after the company commander that was where I was at to start out with, he left. His duty was over with over there, and we had a different officer come in there, and he was a little pushy, and he didn't, there was no joking around with him. It was all business, let's put it that way.
What was the highest rank you ever achieved?
Okay, the highest rank was the Specialist 4, is what I got. And the one thing about that, all the people that I worked with in the office there, what I was doing, they became Spec 5s. And this other lieutenant that came in there, the second CO, I went and asked him one day, I said, how come I can't be a Spec 5? I said, the rest of them are, and they've been here just as long as I have. And all the jobs I'm doing, I should actually think I should be a Spec 5. He says, you see this board over here? And there was a big board, and he says, you're in a 3/4 ton truck driver slot. That's only Spec 4, and that's as high as you get to go.
What were your duties?
My duties at that time were, I was in, how would you call it, making sure all of our equipment, was getting to where it was supposed to get to, for the day, each day. And I had, like I said, I had to make out reports, to get up to battalion headquarters and stuff. And I did that the whole time. Well, it wasn't really what I was supposed to be doing because it wasn't what my MOS, but that's what the first sergeant put me into, after I was there, And so I got that done, those jobs done. And then whenever I came back, I was off, I was off duty, I stayed home for a month before I had to go to Fort Lewis, Washington, and they put me in the same kind of outfit again, doing the same kind of stuff. And I go, I can't get out of this.
Was there a chance that you could see combat?
I did not see combat. The only closest I came to seeing combat was one night there was a ammo dump within a mile of where our headquarters was, and Viet Cong dropped a mortar round in on it, and it blew the whole dadgum ammo dump up. So we kind of went on, alert at that time, and we was all, out in, so nothing came in.
How did you feel about avoiding combat?
Actually, at that time, it was very bad over there, because when I got in Vietnam, it was during the Tet Offensive over there, and I got there like in December, of '67, and that's when the worst part of all of it was really getting bad over there in Vietnam.
Did you personally know anyone who did see combat?
Yes, I did. Like I said a while ago, the one friend of mine that got killed over there. And I've known some other guys. There was another person that before I went over, I was still in high school at that time. He graduated ahead of me, and he was one of the first people from Randolph County that got killed over in Vietnam.
Where were you when your period of service was up? When your period of service was up, where were you?
Oh, I was in Fort Lewis, Washington. That's where I was at.
How did you return home?
How
did you return home?
By airplane.
How were you received by your family and community?
My family was very happy to see me. My grandfather, I do know, whenever I got back from Vietnam, because my dad had been in World War II, and then I was over in Vietnam. When I first came home, I went to see him, and he started to cry, and that kind of upset me, But as far as a lot of other people, around at that time, they didn't really care about people coming back from Vietnam. So they thought we was all, they had names for us at that time. So.
How did you readjust to civilian life?
Just got with the friends I used to have, and we just palled around. That was about it.
What was the biggest surprise about the civilian workplace?
As far as that, it was like, you could do, things, while I was working that I couldn't do while I was in service, which was one of the better things about that,
Have you remained in contact with or reunited with fellow veterans?
That's right.
Have you reconnected, with any veterans?
I've talked to some of the guys that's been in the service, as I've tried to get in touch with some of the buddies I had while I was in Vietnam, and I have not been able to get in contact with them. The bad thing is, whenever I had a address book, and somehow it got lost, with all their names in it, and that upset me a lot, so.
Are you a member of any veterans organization?
Yes, I am. I belong to the Stillville Legion over in Stillville, Illinois, and I belong to the BFW over in Chester, Illinois.
What have you done since separating from the military?
I've been married twice. I've worked as far as, after I got back out of the service, I worked as a truck driver for several years, and then they lost their business, and then I started working at mental health down in Chester, Illinois, and I worked there for 30 years till I retired. And that was back in, I retired back in 2002, so I've been retired ever since then.
How did your service experiences affect your life?
Sometimes I have dreams about being, in the service again and being over in Vietnam, and that kind of, I wonder, it kind of bugs me sometimes. Then I also have other dreams, about the good times I had when I was in Vietnam, so that, it all works out.
What key knowledge, skills, abilities, and experiences that you learned from military service would you say are the most valuable? What did you learn from being in the military?
Okay, to respect people, make friends, That's one thing. And, you know, do things right. That's one of the main things, I believe, okay?
How has your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
As far as, you know, some of the stuff that's going on now, you know, where we're at and what we're doing, I don't go along with, I don't agree with, you know. Then there's other things that's going on now that I think they're going to get in more trouble than they really need to be. And that's how I feel about it, you know.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view this interview?
I think really, you know, it wouldn't be a bad idea, you know, for just about everybody that was eligible or able to serve in the military at some time, to serve, to learn how to do things, you know, better for themselves and learn respect of people. That's how I feel about it.
Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to this interview?
Not at the moment that I can think of, you know. I think we've had a, you know, pretty good deal, you know. So.
So how old were you when you joined?
How old was I? Okay, I was 18, going or getting close to 19, you know, when I went in.
What was your most exhausting experience?
That I don't really, you know, cannot. I'm not really sure on that, you know. There wasn't really anything that was really exhausting, you know, that I can think of, you know, at the moment, you know.
Was there any part of your job that you were especially good at?
I'm sorry, say that.
Was there any part of your job that you was especially good at?
Not really, you know. I tried to do things the way they were supposed to be done, you know, and there was times that I messed up. There was other times, you know, that I did better at things, you know. So, but.
What was the most impressive place that you saw?
Well, actually, there was two places that really impressed me. I was really glad to go to Australia on R&R to see Sydney, to see what that was like, you know. And the one thing about Sydney, downtown, the middle of Sydney, Australia, there was like 5 roads that came together, no stop signs. you went when you could. The other thing was going down to into Benoit, Vietnam, you know, and seeing the way the people lived over there, and you know, they had, you know, just little shacks, more or less like cardboard boxes. Some of the places. The other thing that really, you know, shocked me was one time I had to go with one of the officers, drive them down to Saigon, and we went to a place where they had a bunch of these, what they called connexes. You know, they hauled stuff over in ships over to, you know, different places, and this priest that went with us, he was looking for food for, you know, some of the people to give to, you know, and we opened one of them connexes, and all it had was baby food in it, and this connex was sitting out there, and it's 100 and some degree heat, and the bottles were almost all busted open, and that was very atrocious. I mean, it stank terrible in there.
What are your hobbies?
My hobbies? I like to hunt, if I can anymore. You know, sometimes I can't because I have diabetes, you know, and I have neuropathy of my feet, and when it gets cold, I can't stand it outside, you know, hunting, you know, and stuff like that. Other than that, I like to watch NASCAR, you know, and I've been to several, you know, racetracks and stuff watching NASCAR and that, you know. I also like just the go out and shoot rifles and stuff. That's about it, you know. So.
Did you ever meet or see anyone famous?
No, I missed out the time to see whenever I was. It was temporary duty when I first got over to Nam, and they put us in a transportation outfit. You know, there was about 100 of us. They put on temporary duty there to stand guard duty every night for this transportation company because they was hauling supplies up to the DMZ, and that was right around Christmas time. And I could have went down to where they had the big show over there, you know, in Vietnam, and I would have got to see a lot of the people, you know, big musicians and whatnot, all, you know, at that time, and I missed out on that.
What was your most exciting experience?
Let's see. Like I said, the most exciting experience was actually coming back from Vietnam. I mean, that was it. I mean, going over, we was on an airplane. It was like a commercial air flight, you know, but the whole plane was filled with soldiers, you know, up front, and a big part, there was the officers. All the rest of us was back in the, you know, the other quarters, and we didn't have any meals. There was no movies. We just sat there. The only thing is, the last place we stopped, there were several of the guys that was back in our, you know, group. They had could buy liquor at this place, you know, and they bought a bunch of bottles and they passed that around to everybody.
Was there any part of your job that you especially enjoyed?
Actually, the part of my job was, you know, what I had to do, you know, get the reports up to battalion headquarters, you know, and I made a lot of friends up there, you know, officers and whatnot all, and I enjoyed working with you know, the first sergeant I had there in Vietnam, and like I said, the rest of my buddies that worked in the same place that I did, and that was the most, you know, I really enjoyed that, you know, because we got along good together.
What was your most frightening experience?
The night they blew up the ammo dump, whenever, you know, because I had just crawled into my bunk and I was laying there, and all of a sudden I see this big flash of light, and I go, what is that? And like I said, it was like a mile away, and it took about, you know, a few seconds for you could feel the blast, you know, and it shook the whole building I was in, and everybody jumped out and go, what is going on, you know, so.
Can you tell me about some funny moments?
The friend moments was the one time, the one buddy I had, like I said, he was the CO's driver, and his name was Earl. And we got around, we'd sit around and drink beer every once in a while together, you know, and whatnot and all. And one night we were sitting there, and we were drinking beer, and he looked at me, he said, Dennis, he said, I just have a hard time pronouncing your last name. He said, I'm just going to call you Snoopy from now on. So that's what I've been called ever since then, Snoopy.
Did you have any contact with civilians?
Yes, there was a lot of contact with civilians, you know. The Vietnamese, you know, a lot of them worked there, you know, cleaning up in the area and whatnot all. And there was some of them in the EM club that I worked at that worked there. They was like waitresses, you know, and I got in, you know, contact with them. And then also, like, you know, civilians, you know, like when I was in Australia, the one day there was 5 of us, you know, in the same hotel together, and we decided not to really go anywhere that day, so we were sitting around. Well, there was a grocery store just down the street, and we went in there and got some food, you know, stuff to make sandwiches and stuff, and there was a older couple, you know, that owned the place. We talked with them for over an hour they'd asked us questions about the States, we'd asked them questions about Australia, and it was really exciting about that. You know.
Wow. So overall, how did they treat you?
The civilians and stuff. It was like they, you know, they respected us, but I think most of the times, you know, some of them did it just because they knew they had to, you know, because there was a lot of problems with soldiers and, you know, civilians over in Vietnam at that time, you know, that they didn't get along together, and sometimes you couldn't trust who the other one was, you know, you didn't know if they was on the other side or not, you know.
Did you ever meet any POWs?
No, I did not.
Okay. This concludes our interview. Thank you for taking part in this interview, and thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.